Okay, let's move on to item 5, request for reconsideration, Supervisor Valadez.
Madam Chair, as we've heard, and I've been contacted through my office and out in the community as well, that maybe there's been some issues that we did not consider in discussion of last week, and as a result of that, I've placed this item on the agenda, and I now move to, having voted on the prevailing side last week, on this item, I move for reconsideration.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Supervisor Christy?
Yes.
Supervisor Elias?
No.
Supervisor Miller?
Yes.
Supervisor Valadez?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Chair Bronson?
Excuse me.
You
Vote's not
haven't
over.
voted, I beg your pardon.
Chair Bronson?
Chair Brooks, yes. Supervisor Christy.
Yes. Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to,
Wait. Oh, yeah, motion carries.
thank you. Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to approve the Pima County Department of Transportation Regional Local Road Repair Program as recommended by the Transportation Advisory Committee with a modification to replace the District 4 repairs in the plan with the District 4 committee members' proposed modifications for Year 1 and the resulting changes to Year 2 as presented to the Transportation Advisory Committee on November 28th.
Is there a second?
Madam Chair, for purposes of discussion, and having said what I said, I second it.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Christy.
The District 4 proposed modifications reflect community input gathered by the Green Valley Council, Southeast Regional Council, and the Tangaberry Valley Association. Let me tell you a little bit about these groups. The Green Valley Council, an established 501c4 nonprofit organization representing the voice of Green Valley citizens and promoting the best interests of the community, has a long-standing traffic and arroyos committee that works with Pima County and state agencies to promote well-functioning and well-maintained roads. The Southeast Regional Council, a civic-minded community body, is a coordinated voice of the residents, businesses, and nonprofits in the southeast area of Pima County, which includes Corona de Tucson, Vail, and Southeast Tucson. The Tangaberry Valley Association, a nonprofit corporation, has a half-century of experience bringing together Tangaberry Valley residents and homeowners and their associations to address issues affecting the entire valley. These groups work with community members to analyze road condition ratings, repair treatments, traffic volumes, and cost estimates, and to develop a recommended list of road repairs across their respective areas that is reflective of the best interests of the community and its residents. In the case of Green Valley, the GVC determined that the community was unfairly caught up in a formula that may have made sense countywide, but held unintended negative consequences for the repair of roads in Green Valley. On October 10th, the Green Valley Council and the Southeast Regional Council presented their road repair priorities to the Transportation Advisory Committee. The proposed modifications made by the District 4 committee members are modest in scope, and this is a motion of a modest request. The requested additions reflect community input to repair some failed roads in subdivisions and failed local roadways serving as the primary access to multiple subdivisions with high traffic volumes. The committee members only made 10 additions to and 12 removals from the staff recommended list. 17 of the staff recommended Year 1 subdivisions remained unchanged. The repairs removed from Year 1 were moved to the top of the Year 2 list. The proposed modification repaired 25 subdivisions, only 4 less than the staff recommendation, and 4 road segments serving multiple subdivisions are also repaired. Slightly more than 15 miles of high traffic roadways received repairs, a minor reduction from the staff recommendation of 22 miles. And I'd like to ask for clarification purposes, Mr. DeBonis, is it not correct, Mr. DeBonis, that our recommendations of District 4 to have our recommendations included in our traffic plan And what we were trying to move here, take no monies from any other district and put them in ours.
Chair Bronson and Supervisor Christy, so none of the requested modifications moved monies from any of the districts to any of the other districts.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Thank you. Supervisor Elias.
I'm somewhat frustrated by this reconsideration and this motion, because I think we passed a good motion last week that was fair. District 1 and District 4, they got the majority of the money. And that's probably accurate. I voted in favor of that. I think that's fair. I understand Mr. Christie wanting to represent his constituents the best way he possibly can. But I think we made a decision based on the well-being of the entirety of Pima County, as opposed to the specifics of one individual district. So, Mr. Huckleberry, I want to ask you a question. I mean, given the scenario that we face, we are likely to do a additional allocation of funds in next year's budget for road repair. Is that correct? I can't expect you to see completely into the future, but I believe that's our intention. We certainly spoke about it last summer during our budget discussions.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, the recommendation is for 2 years. However, as you know, our budget process is an annual appropriation
Right.
process. And last year, we did approve those allocations for this fiscal year. Contained in the upcoming budget will be a similar recommendation to make an appropriation similar to this for the following year.
So if we can scrape together 3 votes for your budget, likely we'll have an additional allocation of road funds available to work with the various districts again. And so when you start to figure this out and time this out, it's going to take us 6 months probably to get going on these projects to begin with. And it'll be much easier to get that second allocation, if it's approved by the Board of Supervisors, into action quickly. Is that true, Mr. Huckleberry? That's your intent, isn't it?
Yes, Madam Chair and Supervisor Elias, even today on today's agenda, we got the authorization
Right.
of certificates of participation for both years.
Right, so what we're looking at then, folks, is the issue of who's going to be first in line. But actually, it's a non-issue. It's just simply not true. The truth is that we're going to have a good shot at getting those roads done in District 4 in a different kind of manner and in District 1. And certainly, staff can be talked to, and the Citizens Committee can make recommendations to them as well about how to go forward, changing some of the criteria for how we prioritize the use of that road money. Not an impossible thing. I think also that Supervisor Christie, and I mean this with all due respect because I like Steve, but you know, ultimately I feel like our Citizens Committee has been manipulated by District 4 by having staff members on it and his insistence that he's right and everybody else is wrong. Despite the fact that the committee voted to make those improvements by 1 vote. It was a fair vote of the committee. But I can assure you that from this supervisor's perspective, we have to make decisions about the entirety of the county, not a small group of people who have some very frustrating situations taking place. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't react to that, or we shouldn't help that, or shouldn't make that better. But we're talking about 6 months. And nothing's going to happen in those 6 months anyways. So, what is this all about? It's about one person wanting to have their way. And I just don't think that that's a good way for government to act. I think that we acted in the best interest of Pima County last week in making the motion that we did for the entirety of the county. So it just seems to me that we're way out of line here, and ultimately it would be much better if we took a look at next year's allocation and even put language in the budget and the background material about making sure that some of these issues get taken care of. That's the board's prerogative. But I think to go back on a decision that we made, we're taking candy away from one trick-or-treater and giving it to another. But everybody pays their taxes, and so we have to make a decision for the best of the entirety of the town. And I just think that this is an exercise in futility, because in the end, there's plenty of time, there's plenty of room for all those roads to get repaired without us having to make a reconsideration and throwing more people overboard while catering to some.
I guess I have a comment. I was a third vote last week. And while I agree with some of the points made by my colleague Supervisor Elias, I have a problem with the process in general. We have an $800 million problem or challenge in terms of fixing all our subdivision roads, and we're throwing $8 million a year at it. It's simply not adequate. It's going to take us 100 years at that rate to fix our roads. We need a more comprehensive solution, and as I look at it from District 3, which is 7,403 square miles, much of it rural, much of it not in subdivisions, none of those needs were addressed at all. So I think that we need to continue to refine those metrics. If we are only looking at average daily trips, if we are only looking at greatest number of people served, then the residents of Ajo will not be served, the residents of Arivaca will not be served, the residents of subdivisions that came on board and were not platted will not be served, and there are many of those in District 3. Some of the roads in very, very seriously failed conditions, like Star Valley Estates, will not be addressed. So I don't want this to be a political process. I want this to be a consensus-building process. But as I said, I have problems with the metrics. They need some refining. And with that, I'll end my statement.
Madam Chair, could I just make a short comment in response to that? Because that's exactly what I'm talking about. We can refine those metrics. We can refine those metrics and start to address those issues in very short order. We're talking about 6 months. And when we talk about implementation, it's basically at the same time. There's not any difference in what we do. So I don't understand still. But I concur. The metrics don't work necessarily for your district. I understand that. I think they don't necessarily work for Green Valley.
Supervisor Miller.
Madam Chair, if you'll recall when this road tax came up and it was proposed, Mr. Huckleberry came to see me. I actually got a little excited when he told me the supervisors could actually participate in the process. And I went, wow, we're actually, going to have to be able to do something. And then it came before the board, and the board defined a process. So they were directed the county administrator to define a process. And that process was to do, appoint 2 members to the committee, which I did. And also, I just want to note, it wasn't just District 1 that voted against that tax. It was District 1 for both. So I participated in the process that the board majority agreed to. You have to support what they put out there, even if you don't agree with it sometimes. So appointed 2 people, and I do understand some people have issues with one of the committee members I had on the board. But I thought, okay, we're actually going to get some difference in our roads. Well, the committee members directed, the TAC directed that each district was to do 4 community meetings, right? To solicit input. District 1, we verified this information with Susan Boss in the Department of Transportation last night. District 1 went through the process. We held 4 community meetings, and my staff did outreach to the HOAs, contacted them, informed them of the meetings, and encouraged them to attend. And if they couldn't attend, please contact us, the Pima County Department of Transportation, etc. As a result of that outreach, 581 road repair requests came through my office. The total for all 5 districts, 676. 95, I believe, were in District 4. And what really bothers me is the process wasn't standard across all 5 districts. Districts 2, Districts 3, and District 5 didn't do the 4 community outreach meetings. They didn't have solicit the input. So, you know, I wonder why that didn't happen. For some reason, these districts chose not to. They have their representatives on the committee, but those meetings were not held. So I think I agree with what was said here about the process. I think that's a problem because, as Supervisor Bronson said, some of her constituents didn't get to participate in this process. So that's one issue. These requests on file, we had a huge, as you can tell from the numbers, into District 1. We had a lot of participation. We had individuals from Hidden Valley. They were here last week. They're here today. I spoke to a dentist from that area who had called in. I spoke to him at length on the phone about that area. I understand that's one of the roads that people have a problem with from the news article. And it's really unfortunate. I appointed 2 people. And one individual, first time he's ever served on a community board, he was so excited about this, being able to make a difference. And then the article that Tim Steller wrote in the newspaper, I can tell you, and I know you guys don't care, I don't care, go ahead and attack me, but this man is devastated. He sent in a letter to my office. And he was here last week. And here's what he said about his participation on this committee. And his name is Reggie. Excuse me. I have done my best to be a good citizen, and I volunteered my time and efforts to look out for the best interest of my neighbors. In return, my concerns have been ignored, and at best they were minimized, and finally I have been slandered in the local newspaper. Is it any wonder why people don't want to get involved in government, serving on boards? As for me, I am done with this. He says, I am finished, I quit, I resign, I am totally done. He wanted to help. And they put together, they had a work plan, may not be something that everyone agrees with, but there was no specified way for them to come up with this. They had to come up with it themselves. Are they perfect human beings? No, they're just like the rest of us. So they went out, they did the meetings, and I did include this in the background material so that people can see that they actually had a methodology. And maybe it would have been better if the committee defined the methodology for all of the districts on coming up with these alternates. It's a water under the bridge at this point. So I feel terrible that Supervisor Christy chooses to make a motion today that leaves out District 1. I made the motion last week. I included District 4. This is sad. And, you know, it's describing me and my politics and saying it's about my political motivation. I'm sorry, every one of us up here are politically motivated. We're elected officials. That's what it's about. And if anybody could deny that they're not politically motivated, they're not an elected official, I'm sorry. And everyone in this room knows it. But I guess the biggest disappointment for me is the total lack of respect for the individuals that served on the committee. And they weren't like Supervisor Christie's folks that participated. Green Valley Council, did you know your tax dollars fund them $75,000 a year? And all his representatives were paid. The people I chose were volunteering their time. They did their best. And it's, I just think it really is a sad day for the taxpayers of Pima County. I know this board will most likely approve only District 4. I've already been told that that's the coordinated vote. Confirmed it with Supervisor Christy, and he made the motion here today as he confirmed. So that's all I have to say. Merry Christmas, everyone, and keep up the good work. I sincerely apologize if this is the way this vote's going to turn out.
Madam Order, for a point of order.
Supervisor Valadez.
Madam Chair, Mr. Christie, did you indeed tell Supervisor Miller that there was a coordinated vote?
I never said that there was a coordinated vote at all.
We're missing a member. Any other? Okay.
Had to give me some more Del Bar. I mean iced tea.
All right. Any further discussion? I really, what Supervisor Miller and I think are not known for agreeing very often. I have empathy for what she said. I particularly, all of those, like your subdivision who participated, and I had folks out in Starbuck and who did it with thinking that the world is run by those who show up. If you show up, you might make a difference. I have troubles with that because the metrics in this instance were just for roads that were not in failing condition and that had the highest traffic volume, highest number of people served. Again, I have a problem with the metrics. I think moving forward, we need to refine those. I want to thank everyone who took the opportunity to participate, and I would hope that as we look at round 2, that those who did, and many of you showed up at our board meetings. In terms of my districts, we went out to individual homeowners associations, and they have their concerns. We have, I can't remember how many emails where people participated. We haven't addressed all the needs. I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning. You can't do this $8 million at a time. It just isn't going to work. We've got some seriously failed streets we need to look at I think there's some safety concerns, but we're going to have to find a better metric in terms of funding. We're going to have to find, if we're just going to stick with the road tax, we're not going to get this problem solved, but I think we need to, moving forward into year 2, we need to revisit, and I think Supervisor Elias pointed that out, we need to revisit how we decide as a community which roads are going to get priority. And if there are no further comments, I'm just going to call the question.
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Christy.
could you be so kind as to please restate the motion we are considering?
I'm going to let you be so kind since you're the one that made it. I'm sorry.
The motion is to approve the Pima County Department of Transportation Regional Local Road Repair Program as recommended by the Transportation Advisory Committee with a modification to replace the District 4 repairs in the plan with the District 4 committee member, proposed modifications for year 1 and the resulting changes to year 2 as presented to the Transportation Advisory Committee on November 28th.
Thank you for restating the motion. Roll call. There was a motion and a second was Supervisor Valadez.
Supervisor Christy?
Yes?
Supervisor Elias?
No.
Supervisor Miller?
No.
Supervisor Valadez?
Aye.
Chair Bronson?
I reluctantly, and again with direction to staff, we need to revise the metrics for year 2. Okay.
Very sad.